Now, her answer to this: use sex as a currency. If your man wants more sex, then think of something that you'd like in exchange, like getting them to do the washing up. We can't wait to get started on this one. Please welcome Dr. Catherine Hacking. Now, the findings that we mentioned there, this is in a book that you've published, that it's based on surveys and statistics. This isn't something that you're just putting out there. These are facts.
That's the key point to remember. It's all social science evidence drawn from the national surveys carried out throughout the world, but there have been 3 in Britain, and the latest one was carried out in 2010. And what does it show? It shows that 1/3 of women have no sexual interest. Not low sexual interest, but no sexual interest. This doesn't happen to men in anywhere near those sorts of numbers. So although we're talking about a minority of women being completely out of the sexual market, if you like, just totally uninterested, the general pattern throughout all of the surveys, including the British one, is that the degree of interest, whether you call it sexual motivation, sexual desire, libido, whatever you want to call it, is much, much stronger for men than for women on average in all populations. And there are other differences in terms of attitudes to sexuality. For example, 2/3 of women say that love has to be a precondition for any sexual activity. Well, 2/3 of men reject that idea completely. For men, sexuality is about sex. And for women, very often, it's about love and affection and about other things.
And Catherine, one of the things I think that's so interesting is obviously when I read out the list of things that you cover in your book in terms of ways that women can maybe navigate their relationship, there are audible gasps from the audience, and obviously some people feel outraged by that. If this is based on actual statistics and facts, there's no need to be outraged, because this is what's happening in houses up and down the country. What you're saying is this is a way to work around what is essentially already happening. Am I right in that?
Yes, I'm simply saying there is a problem there. And it's been a myth in the past, or feminists like myself have always said it's a myth that men have stronger sexual interest than women, and that would all disappear with the contraceptive revolution and the sexual revolution. We'd all become the same. And the surveys show that we just haven't become the same.
Can I just interject here? You're saying as a feminist, which I think we would all call ourselves here as well, why should it be the women that change their behavioural patterns and not the men?
Men are clearly compromising already, but the research results show is that this problem is A, there, and B, getting worse. Now, there are several reasons why it's getting worse, and one of them is that some women are choosing not to marry. So, I mean, you're talking about men who don't have a partner.
But a lot of women choose not to marry simply because they want to have a variety of sexual partners, or they want to be in control of their sex lives. What I find interesting about your theory is you're saying that 1/3 of women aren't interested in sex, but does that average encompass all age groups? Because it's very well documented that older people of both sexes, their interest in sex diminishes, although recently there was stuff saying, well, people in their 80s, the libido actually goes a little bit up. Now, I've been on this show and said many times that in a relationship, not separating out the sex, but in my relationship, because I've been married many times, I've looked at a relationship as a bit of a business deal in my head, that they cross the line, all their chips have gone, and then they're out the door. But I think I was kind of shocked by your book in that you reduce you take out the emotion out of the relationship. You've reduced it to a series of transactions almost. It's almost like an economic deal. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I am a social scientist, and social scientists will tell you that in practice all relationships are an exchange. Whether it's an exchange of love and security for sexuality.
So it is a series of deals anyway.
Yes,
we're not,
all relationships, that's hidden most of the time. and not explicit most of the time. But sometimes it becomes very much more explicit. That's
What I
all.
find difficult is when you go into areas like if you're not giving your partner, if you're not satisfying them sexually, then they could be more likely to go out and sexually abuse other women, or I find that really just hard to digest and comprehend because, you know, I might not see my partner for 4 or 5 months. I certainly don't expect that to be a reason why he might go and do something completely unlawful and illegal. And also then I disagree with the whole concept because I feel like as a man, if you're not satisfied and you're not happy and you're with a partner who isn't giving you that satisfaction, you have a choice. Say, see you later, I'm going to go and find somebody who wants the same things as me.
Yes, well, one of the things that I'm saying as a result of the male sexual deficit is, and the changes in society generally, is that actually women have the edge now. Whereas before it was the man who proposed marriage because he was offering something valuable to the woman. Nowadays, it seems to me that we're going to be in this opposite situation with women proposing marriage because women are now in control, because there's a surplus of men numerically. There are more men than women, that's the first thing. And the worst example of that is China, and so we can look to China as to what the implications are. Rise in use of sex industry, sexual violence, bride kidnapping. Well, we're nowhere near that sort of extreme at the moment, but there are things that are still happening already in the Western world. One is they've got more men than we ever had before because we haven't had wars to kill them off. And secondly, women now have financial autonomy and independence, and therefore they can choose not to marry. They can impose their own terms and conditions on relationships. They're in control to a degree they never were.
You're talking about me.
Yes, exactly. And it's precisely because of things like that that men now have more of a problem than they had before.
So, do you think that if a woman finds out her husband is having an affair, she should turn a blind eye to it?
I argue that the French approach to affairs is by far the more civilised one than the serial monogamy approach, which is what you get in Anglo-Saxon countries. I mean, there are women who say if there's any infidelity at all, that's the end of the relationship. And I take the view that if the marriage is actually a good marriage and the father is a good father, then you don't destroy a marriage just because of minor infidelity. And all affairs blow over, whether it's in days or weeks or months, they all blow over. And the French approach is, even if you see any evidence of an affair, you turn a blind eye because you know it won't last long. And the other part of the story in the French approach is he should never allow any evidence of an affair to come forward to embarrass you. You never embarrass your spouse in any way whatsoever.
Joe, we are not taking the French approach.
Dr. Hakim, it's very, very interesting. Obviously, it's something that's going to polarise a lot of our viewers. Thank you for coming on to talk us through it. The book is called The New Rules. It's Catherine Hakim, everyone. Thank you.